Hi, I'm Cheryl from Evoca. In this video, I'll show you how to create an instance from your material and apply it to your model to be able to tweak the settings and see them instantly. So where we left off in the last video, I got you to turn your Selena head material into a proper SSS. So if I open up my head, you should have something that looks very similar to here. So you should have swapped out the diffuse texture, the epidermis, the mask, null maps, and so forth for the head. So you should have this now. Now what we want to do is we want to apply it to Selena. If you have already done this, that's fantastic. Now if you remember right, to apply textures, all you do is you make sure the LOD info of the texture is expanded. And if we click on material, it will highlight what part of the mesh is what. So we've got the body and we've got the head. To apply the head texture, make sure the material is selected in the content browser, and we can click this little green arrow to apply that to the head. So once you've done that, Selena should have textures on her. But you've noticed that we've still got problems with the eyes. Now, when we first created the material, if you remember right, we turned it into a blend masked, which enabled the opacity mask. You can see in the texture here that it's white. That's because it hasn't been masked out yet, because we need the eye from the body to show up onto the actual eyes on the head. And when you've created the eye texture, you've put that on the body, not in the head texture, which is fine. So what we need to do is, from the Selena diffuse, which is where we saved out the alpha, we need to grab this alpha, so the white little box, and we need to plug that into opacity mask. Now watch what happens to this white eye when I plug this in. It's gone. That means it's allowing the color to come through from the other texture. Now, if you're also not sure what texture you actually put the alpha in, because you can put alphas into anything, you can even hide them in normal maps if you want. It allows you to see what textures you've done alphas within the UDK. So what we'll do is, if you select this texture, and this little button here next to the green arrow finds it in the content browser. So if I click on this, that's taken me straight to the content browser into that texture. If I double click on this texture, this shows me the different settings of the texture. It tells me what's been imported, what's going to be displayed, what's going to be max in game, and so forth. Now, I'm not going to go through all of this, but what I am going to show you is you can see that the alpha is working because you've got transparency in these areas, and especially in the eye area. Now, up here, you've got your different values. You've got your red, green, blue, and alpha. So as I turn these off, and there it shows you the alpha. You can see that the alpha is working. Okay, so I'll just close that. So don't forget, save your package. Okay, now if we have a look at Selena, the eye is still white, but that's because there's one other thing that we need to do. So if we open up the body material and have a look. Now you've noticed that we've got the eyeball in the body. When we've saved it out, we've accidentally turned off the eye for the epidermis and the other layers. And what it's doing is it's picking up the skin epidermis here as being white. So what we need to do is we need to go back into Photoshop, save out the epidermis, and update the texture. Now, this is very simple to do, and this is why I've done it this way, so you can see how easy it is to update textures within the UDK. So what I'll get you to do is open up Photoshop, and if you can open up your Selena body PSD material. Okay, so once you've got that open, what we'll do is we'll come into our layers and come down to your diffuse layers and expand that. And if we come down to our skin, and we want the epidermis. So we'll turn off the others. All you need to do is turn off the subdermal pass and the backscattering pass and leave the epidermis on. As you can see, we haven't turned off the eye this time, so the eye will show up properly. So once you've done that, again, we'll make sure that the image size is 2048. It's back to 4096. So change that to 2048 and OK. And we'll let it resize itself. Now what we're going to do is when we save this, we're going to save over the top of the original epidermis that we created the first time. So File, Save As, and don't forget to change it to a targa. And go to where you initially saved your body texture. So if you remember right, we created a folder structure in the UDK. So go to your UDK directory and go to the month that you've saved it under, UDK game, content, the unit number, and textures. So the one that we want to save over is the body epidermis. Select this and click Save. Now it'll say, do you want to replace it? Yes, I do. So hit Yes. Now we don't have to worry about the alpha in this case, so leave it as 24 bits pixels and OK. Okay, done. Now open back up the UDK. And if you can go into your material for your body, what we're going to do is we're going to swap out the skin epidermis with the saved one. Okay, so this is the one that we're going to work on. So I'm just going to move the matte material out of the way. Come to your assets and your textures. And the body epidermis is what we're going to update. Now, keep in mind, if you have a look in here, you can see we've got the white eye here. Okay, and this is in the texture editor or the material editor. All you need to do is, because we overrode the texture, all you need to do to update it is from here, right click and choose re-import texture. Now watch what happens. I'll just pause this while it's importing. And we're done. And as you can see, it's updated that with the eye texture. So we'll save this. Now have a look at your material and have a look and see what it's done to the skin epidermis. It has updated it with the eye texture. So if you now have a look, your eye texture is here. So if you haven't already done so, tick the green tick to apply the changes, and we'll close the material. Don't forget to save. Right click and save. Now let's have a look at Selena. As you can see, she has her eye texture back. So if you do decide to make any changes, that's how you can go back into the Photoshop file, make changes, save over the top of the one that you want to make changes to, and you can re-import the texture, and it updates everything. So if you've already used that inside a material or an instance, it'll automatically update with a flick of an eye. So the next thing we're going to do is create an instance so we can start tweaking the color of her SSS. So before we create an instance, what I'm going to do is we're going to do a bit of a tidy up. If you remember right, we actually haven't got a group for materials. We've only got mesh and textures. And because when we brought in Selena, when we brought her in from Max, it put everything in the mesh folder. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how you can tidy it up a bit more, and we'll move the materials that we've already created out of the mesh group and into a material group. So to do that, select the Selena head, go into the mesh, select the Selena head and the body, Selena body mat. Make sure they're selected, right click on one of them and choose move or rename. Okay. Grouping, we're going to create a new group called material. We're going to leave the names as they are and click OK to all. Done. And now it's created a new group for material, so we can easily go straight into the material section, straight into the texture section, and straight into the mesh. Now I know the mesh has got a head diffuse. That also came in from Max, and we can delete that since we already have a head diffuse texture that we brought in from Photoshop. So if you want to delete this, you can highlight it like so, click on it once, right click, and choose delete. Done. So we've now tidied this up. Don't forget to save. Okay. So what we want to do now is create an instance. And I'll just demonstrate what I mean by the instance versus the material when it comes to making changes. So to create an instance, we'll do it with the head first. Select the material, right click, and we've got two options here. We have got create new material instance constant, create new material instance time varying. We are not worried about time varying. Time varying is fantastic if you're doing a day-night system on your sky. Time varying includes Kismet and Matinee. But because this is not something that we're using for Kismet or Matinee or a sky system, we just want constant. A lot of times when you create an instance, it will be constant. If you are using an instance for a Matinee sequence, as I say, day-night system, or things like that, you'd use time varying, but we're not worried about that. We just want constants. So choose create new material instance constant, and it will come up with a create new material instance constants option box. Now we want to create it in this package. Now grouping, we're going to create an instance group. Now I am very fussy in the way I name things. I'm going to call this inst, meaning instance, Selena head. So I know that's an instance for her head material. Click OK. And what it does is it will open up a material that looks like this, which I will just scale into the recording view mode. Okay. With all these different options here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to close it for now. What it's also done is it's created a new group in the content browser, and you can see where your instance is. So save this, right click and save. Go back into material, and I want you to do the same thing for the body mat. So right click, choose create new material instance constant. We will choose this little arrow or this little button here and select, unfortunately it's off the screen, select instance and OK. And we'll call this inst Selena body and OK. And it's done the same. It's opened up the instance and it's plonked it into your instance group under the assets folder. So don't forget to save. Now what we want to do is we want to apply that to Selena, because at the moment she's only got the original master material applied to her. But before I do, I'm just going to apply it, just one part of the body, to show you the difference between tweaking the material and waiting for it to compile versus tweaking the instance. So I'm just going to grab the body, go into the instance and grab the body of the instance. So select it and open up Selena. And sorry, I'll select it again. So select the body and remember to click on the word material to find out which one it is, and click on the arrow here to add it. You can also tell them what material is there if you read it here as well. So we're going to apply this instance to here, to the body. Now nothing's changed because we haven't made any changes. Once we've done that, what we'll do is we'll save that. Just to make it easier, we're going to drag her into the scene. So to bring a mesh into a scene, it's simple. I'm just going to move this to the side a little bit and show you. We have got Selena here and we've got our level. All you do is click, hold and drag, and there she is. Okay, and there's Selena. There's our mesh. So if you remember, what we have done is we've applied the body instance to the body, and the head has still got the original master shader applied to it. So one's the instance, one's the master. So if I open up the head, and I'll just move a few things to the side, and I decide, okay, I want to change the color of her diffuse on the head. Okay, so in the material, come over to where you've got your diffuse color. Just sort of put this to the side here. Okay, and let's just pick a color. So select the diffuse and come and click on this default value and pick a color. Let's make her a bit green and click OK. Great, it's changed here, but it hasn't updated here yet because we have not yet applied it with this tick. Okay, so I'll just try and make it easier. Okay, so watch what happens when I hit tick. That wasn't too bad. That wasn't too bad. But we still had to wait X amount of seconds for it to update. Now, watch how quick it is when I make changes to her body using the instance. So I'll just close this, and from the content browser, go into the instance and we'll open up the body. Now, before I make the changes, I'll just go over a few little things on the instance for you. The reason why I kept getting you to create groups when we were turning things into a parameter was simply this. It's much easier in the parameter groups to come spec, SSS, and anything else we haven't done. Now, we haven't done one for the diffuse color. So if you want, go ahead and create a group for the diffuse color. If you ever forget or don't bother putting in groups, it'll just be under the default values, the default headings that Epic use for the instance. But as you can see, it's much easier just to see these different options and go, oh, yep, I want to change the spec, or I want to change the SSS. And as you can see, we've got these different names of what we called each of our parameters, just to make it easier for you or for anyone else who are using your shaders to tweak things easily. So with the head, we changed the color. And what we want to do now is, I'll just show you how quickly it is to change using an instance. So say, for example, absorption color. Actually, no, I'll use diffuse color. It's easier for now. To make any changes, you've got to make sure there's a tick in each of these. If you do not have these ticked, it will actually not make any changes. So make sure that these are ticked if you want to make changes. So diffuse color, I'm going to change. So watch this and watch how quickly this is. So have a look at her arms. Select this color. Look how quick that is. As I am making these changes, you can see her skin color change instantly. We do not have to worry about waiting for the shader to compile itself to be able to see it. So this is why it is fantastic to use an instance. Now, in some cases, instance can be very heavy. So what you want to do is you want to create an instance, make your changes, and then hard code them into the master material, and then take the instance away. Especially when it comes to landscapes, always best to use the master material over an instance because it can get very heavy, memory heavy. But this can show you why it's so quick and easy to create an instance to make changes. So now what we'll do is I'll just close this. We will now apply the head instance back to Selena's head. So call up Selena, go into the instance, and we'll select the head. Yes, I know it's green. That's because we've got to change it back in the master material, but why should we? We've now got an instance. We can change that from green to whatever color we want. So with the instance selected, come into Selena, find the head, which is the second one, and hit the green arrow to apply it to her head. And again, don't forget to save. So now I'll just move this to the side. If I open up her head texture, and of course I don't really want her to have a green colour, make sure you tick diffuse colour, come into here, and let's just put it back to something a little bit better, like so. Okay, now this is also where you can change all the other settings. Spec brightness. If we have a look, at the moment I've got it on half. Now keeping in mind this is just the head that we're doing, we also want to make changes to the body. So you can just open up both and you can have the settings to be the same, or you can change them depending on what you want. So spec brightness, as I brighten this up, the head, as you can see, is getting brighter. That's a little bit too bright, but it shows you what it's doing. Spec power, likewise, you can make it more diffuse or more tight. Now she looks really, really wet. Now, the absorption colour. This we can also change, and you'll see it. Sometimes it's very hard to see in the skin. I can see it just changing. But with all these different colours, you've also got to play with the scatter radius. I'll change the back scatter colour. I'll just make some outrageous colours so you can see what it's doing. I know it's a bit outrageous. I'll make that bright green. It's very subtle. It's very, very subtle. But if we now have a look at the back scatter, and as we increase these figures, she's going to get a bit grainier and then a bit softer. But what I also need to do is light her properly so we can see the effects better. So it's very subtle, these effects. You'll see it more if you play with the arms, but tweak it to your liking until you get her how you want it to look. I mean, she looks a little bit plastic in the head. That's because I've played with the scatter radius. But what I'll do is I'll put it back to the settings that I had before. Now, if you untick, it'll go back to the normal settings. Like so. Okay. So to light her properly, because at the moment she's not really lit properly, what you need to do is you need to do a light matte build. Now, to do a light matte build, you need to make sure you've got a few things in the scene. The most important thing is this box here. Okay. That is your light mass importance volume. If you don't have that, it will error, it could crash, it can do all sorts of things. Now this comes default in the scene, so it's already there. Try not to delete it. If you do accidentally delete the light mass importance volume, I will quickly show you how you can create another one. If I just move this box out of the way, and I'll smooth the sun up. This is your build brush. And this is what you use to create CSG geometry, or BSP geometry, whatever you want to call it, same thing. Now, if I decided I just wanted to create a light mass importance volume around this volume without changing the box size at all, with the box selected, if you come into volumes and select add volumes, click for options, all you do is you click on that, and here it is here, light mass importance volume. If I click that, and then I move the box, there's my light mass importance volume. And of course, you can resize it to your liking. So if you ever get an error and you realize, oh, whoops, I don't have a light mass importance volume, add it back in, and then you can do a light build. So whenever you are packaging something up, you need to make sure it's on production. At the moment, I've got it set to production. If you are quickly looking at something, you can keep clicking on this to change it from production to preview, medium, high, production. So I'm just going to leave it on production for now, and I'm just going to do a quick light build. Now, before I also do that, when I do a production build, I want to make sure that the light map resolution is a bit of higher quality than 32, which is the default. So if I come into the mesh and come into double click on Selena, This is where we can change the light map resolution. The higher the number, the better. But the higher the number, the longer it also takes to build. So I'm just going to beef this up. I'll just do it to 128, just for this. Okay, so type in 128 and enter. And we'll close that, and don't forget to save. Now, depending on how large the scene is, depends on how quickly this will build. It can take a very, very, very long time for full productions. I mean, a long time. So don't panic if you're going, oh, this is taking forever. It can take forever. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shoot off a light build, and I'm going to pause this video because it will take a while. So to shoot off a light build, once you've got the setting, click this button here. Now it'll come up with a lighting build options. I'm going to recommend you leave this to default. Use light mass because light mass is on, production quality, and OK. What will happen is it will come up with some information. It'll open up your swarm agent, which is what it uses to do the lighting. It gathers certain things within the scene and starts to build. So I'm just going to pause this and let this build. So once the light map has been done, you should have a character that looks pretty neat and clean. And as you can see, there are no known issues like lighting issues. So from here, you can tweak her to your liking. So you can make her look a bit more plasticky if you wanted to. You can make her look a bit more realistically skin-wise. So all you need to do is to make any changes, if you remember, call up the content browser, go into the instance and tweak to your heart's content. So I'll just show you one more time. If we come into here and we decide, now this is the body. Let's move her across a bit. And remember to always tick what you want to change. So I decide to change this. If you look carefully, you can see her body changing a little bit more plastic. And as you can see carefully, as I increase this figure, it's starting to get a bit too grainy, but you can see it's becoming more and more like plastic, and the less we have, the less scatter that's coming through, and probably a bit more skinnified. But again, tweak the radius, tweak the figure. 0.3 I found was pretty good. 20, very plasticky, and starting to get grainy. You can change the colours. You can see that since I've given more scattering, a bigger scatter radius, the subdermal is coming through more. As you can see it changing as I move the colours. And we've got the back scatter colour as well that you can change. And it's very, 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 very subtle. You can see it's there. And of course the absorption colour. And it's very subtle as well. Some of it you've got to be careful of how you set the parameters. And of course diffuse colour. If I want to make her a bit pinky, a bit blue, or an alien, a bit green. And of course spec brightness and spec colour. Again, the spec brightness makes it brighter, the specular highlight, and the spec power either makes it really diffuse or a real tight circle. And now that we've got normal maps on it, you can see the spec working really, really well, the spec brightness and especially the spec power. It works well with the normal maps. So that wraps it up. So what we have learned in this video lessons is how to export your model correctly, how to create 2 UV maps, one for the all-important light maps that the UDK needs, how to import the model correctly, how to also create a simple basic file structure, how to import your textures, how to export your textures or save your textures correctly out of Photoshop, how to create alpha maps or save with alpha maps, and how to create a basic SSS shader. Also, don't forget, when you're creating an SSS shader, you must be in DirectX 11. So I hope you enjoyed this. This was pretty fun for me to do. Hope you enjoyed it as well, and I hope you have fun making further SSS shaders and improving on the basic one.